Hey everybody, welcome to Family by Design. So glad you were able to join in and listen to this conversation that Liz and I have about really the difference between bashing your spouse versus getting some help or getting some counsel. Oftentimes people will go and get, and I'm holding up air quotes here, counsel, but they end up just really bashing their spouse. It's really about getting your heart set right. God will give you wisdom, begin to work on your behalf. We just talk about that difference here, so be encouraged and blessed as you listen. Okay, so this is a question. Did this come in from, was this your question or one that came in from a listener?
No, I thought of it.
Oh, okay. Well, you do listen to our podcast.
I do.
Okay.
They actually bless me. They're really great.
Here's the question. What's the difference? And so this is kind of in context of dealing with a spouse. Mm-hmm. What's the difference between talking bad about your spouse versus, and I could kind of say venting, but also maybe seeking some counsel to be able to release some of the burden of dealing with a challenging spouse or a spouse that you're having a challenging situation with.
Right. Yeah.
Because sometimes, we need to be able to go, especially to friends or people that are older than us in the Lord, to say, hey, I have a situation here and I need help. But sometimes that can get over into gossip, uncovering your spouse and their sin and their problems, whatever. And there can be a fine line there. So speak to that.
So I think, like you said, it's dependent upon like your goal out of it. Is your goal out of it just to spew so that you can feel better and make them look bad because you're mad or angry or frustrated, and it can turn out into some like manipulation?
Because if that's the case, you got a bigger problem than whatever your spouse did.
Right?
Yeah.
Or you're trying to seek wisdom, you're seeking counsel so you know how to navigate through the challenge, because oftentimes, this is what I found out, it has a bigger deal to do with you and your perspective and how you're managing yourself versus what's going on with them.
Yeah.
Because when you come to this position and you're really out to not just feel better in a moment, but know how to have victory over many challenges, how to navigate ourselves, you're going to have a greater success than just in a moment. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, especially with our spouses or whatever, you'll have like an expectation or a hope, and then when they don't do something or they keep doing something that is frustrating to you, it's real easy to just spew. And I think in that place to, first off, who are you spewing to?
Right.
Who are you trying to go get counsel to? And is it really counsel? Are you just wanting to gossip, talk bad about, vent?
Yeah, and I would say if they're not willing to stop you in your tracks and say, hang on a second here, are you covering your spouse here? Or are you trying to expose them and talk bad about them? If they're not willing to do that, you probably shouldn't go to them for counsel.
That's right. Because here's the thing, that in that place, depending on who you're spewing to, if they're not strong enough to stop you and say, this isn't okay or this isn't the right way, and you're uncovering, then it causes whoever you talk to have who could take up an offense for you. Mm-hmm. And then it causes a wedge or a distance or a disdain in their heart towards the other person. So now we've just created a bigger problem than we did any solution.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that
because
as far as getting counsel,
yeah,
oftentimes people will go with the one side and how they hurt them and da-da-da. And there's probably truth to it. Undoubtedly, there's truth to it. But we've heard it said before, there's
two sides to one.
Three sides to every story. Your side, their side, and the truth.
Yeah,
and the truth usually lies somewhere in between. And that doesn't mean that someone's going and just telling lies. But there's always the other side, the other perspective of the thing that needs to be brought into it. So whenever somebody anymore, even people that would come and say, "Oh, I'm being abused," or this, that, or the other, I don't, unless I know that person very, very well in the situation, I don't just believe what people tell me anymore. Because as a pastor, as a minister, because people, they say all kinds of stuff, and they think, and we don't really deal with this as much anymore because we learned to stop it. But people have oftentimes thought that pastors are just a place to like dump all of their emotions and opinions and stuff. But once we started being like, okay, well, how is this helping you right here? And now that's our track record with people.
Yes.
Let's bring solution, and let's walk in love, and let's get this thing fixed. There's less people that are willing to do that. There's lots of people that are willing to gossip and willing to talk bad and slander and backbite, which is why this type of a podcast is so important, because it can help people really check their heart motive, which is where you started from. Like, why are you wanting to go and talk to somebody about this? Or and there is a place to have counsel and things with friends. You know, we have friends or whatever that we would share things with, just, you know, burdens, whatever, that we would want them to pray with us about. But I would never go to somebody and bash you to them. I would never do that. You would never do that to me either, because what you and I have is, in terms of natural, as you know, married couple, in terms of natural covenants, is the strongest one that we have. Mm-hmm. There's nothing. I mean, we have some of the, you know, the best friends, the greatest people in our church, but none of that. The only covenant stronger than what you and I have is mine with the Lord and yours with the Lord. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, nothing stronger. So why would I go to another person to run down the one that I have the strongest covenant with? A marriage covenant is very, very important. So it needs to be protected. But there are times when you're dealing with a difficult spouse where you need some wisdom, you need guidance, you need input. So you had better go in the right manner, in the right way, with the right attitude, right heart motivation, which is to help and to cover them at the same time. Mm-hmm. You should not tell any more details than what's necessary, but tell enough to get help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's wise counsel, is that here's kind of the situation. You're not making that person look bad. You're trying to protect them in it, but then also know how to navigate you through it.
Yeah.
That like, what is my goal when I'm going to talk to somebody about a situation, especially with our spouse? And a lot of times we open our mouths in flippant discussion. We do not we're not mindful of what we're saying.
And sometimes it's not even going and seeking counsel and then bashing the person. It's just in conversation, which is what you're talking about. Be like,
oh my gosh, my husband, he is so ridiculous.
All he wants to do is play golf.
Yes, or like he never does this, or he's always doing this. And those are, sometimes we can even say those in passing.
Yeah. Which reveals your heart, because you're obvious, if what you're saying is true, that they are this, that, or the other, or they're doing this, that, or the other, you've now placed a label on them and you're no longer contending for them. You're just talking bad about them. You ever see the movie, The War Room? I think we probably watched that one together. Yeah. I watched that with one of the boys not long ago. You were somewhere and we were watching this. And, you know, the elderly woman, the woman that had been praying and stuff and had gotten used to praying and seeking the Lord and contending for that. I liked her character in the movie a lot. So then the real estate agent that came in, remember the story, she comes in and she's going to help her sell the house. Mm-hmm. And she's like, this is my third favorite room in the house. And she's like, this is my second favorite room in the house. And then she starts meddling a little bit in the other lady's, the real estate agent's life, who's there to help her sell. And she counsels her a little bit and probably almost stuck her nose in a little too far, but could see that she needed help in her marriage and stuff. And so as they're getting ready to leave, she said, what's your first favorite room in the house? She said, come back tomorrow and I'll tell you. And of course, then she takes her to what she called the war room, which was the place of prayer. So then they sat and they talked, and she said, now, because she had discovered at this point that she was having trouble in her marriage. Mm-hmm. And so the elderly woman tells this younger woman, you know, she's the 35, 40. She said, now tell me what's going on. And she immediately opens up. And I have a point to all this, by the way. She immediately opens up and starts just bashing her husband. And this guy was being a jerk. Like, he was being a total jerk. And was basically deserving of some bashing. So she opens up and starts bashing it, and then you could tell the older woman, they did a great job filming this scene. And you could tell she was getting disgruntled because she's like this. And finally she said, I'm here to help you have resolve and be able to fix things in your marriage. I'm not here to bash your husband, or whatever word she used. And at first she was like, well, then she taught her how to pray. And she taught her how to pray and contend for her husband. And the end of the story is that it's great movie. The end of the story was she contended for her husband. Her husband ended up repenting, coming back to the Lord, and they got their life and their marriage back on the right track. But that elderly woman mothered her and showed her the right way to approach the marriage relationship. And so for husbands and wives, if you have a spouse, your spouse is out of sorts, if you will learn to contend for them through prayer, prophesying over them what God says about
That's
them,
right.
what you see about them, what God says about them. And if you can't see it, you need to ask the Lord for
show me
how God actually sees them. Like you always say, instead of past, present, it's present, future. Lord, what do you see on their life? What are gifts and the calling? And
then I want to relate to that, because not only will that help them, that's going to benefit me.
Oh, yeah.
When they're stepping into what it is that they're called to, and to their purpose and to their destiny, and you help propel that, not only is your heart moved that way and you have so much compassion and you have a new revelation of love and understanding for them, you'll actually have a benefit from that when you see them step into those things. And so it's powerful. We actually did a podcast about how to pray for your spouse, which is not selfishly. It's not about you. The only thing that we can control is how we're navigating us.
Right.
And so are we minding our mouth, and are we only declaring and speaking out the good things? Now, it's not acknowledging the things that need to shift and change, because without the acknowledgement of things that aren't right, then we can't see where it is that we need to go. But it's not remaining in that nastiness. It's about you removing yourself out of that place and then repositioning so that there can be forward movement.
To me, this is the biggest thing, is that if your spouse is a problem, you better make sure you are fixed first before you start to address the problem.
Come on.
And if you will fix your heart first, it's amazing how many times that God will just deal with the other person. Yeah. Now, if there's abuse or different things going on, that are obvious things, get help, work through that.
Right.
But even if there is that, you need to get your heart fixed first. You can deal with you. You don't have to be, even if you were being severely abused, you can allow the Lord to keep your heart right. And again, I'm not saying that anybody should live under that. I'm just saying, even in the worst circumstances, if you keep yourself right, that's the main key. And then you begin to pray and contend and trust that the Lord is going to deal with them and work on them. And you keep yourself also away. At the same time you're dealing with your heart, you hold to your tongue, you keep your mouth, and you don't speak ill of them. I was just reading in Proverbs the other day, and it says to guard your tongue and your mouth. We often talk about guarding our heart,
right,
which of course is incredibly important, but also guard your tongue. What are you saying about that person? Words have power. Words have meaning to it. And we need to begin to, see and speak forth what God would say about that person. And after we deal with our own heart, then we can begin to do that. But ultimately, to me, it comes down to, you need to have yourself set right, and quit making your happiness and your joy and what you call the success of your marriage depending on whether they're doing everything that you think they should do or not. And maybe they're doing some things wrong. Maybe they're just doing some things that you would prefer that they not do, or they do it different than how you're doing it. Stop trying to change them. You change you. Because I don't care how holy you're living. You can always find levels. You can always find things for the Holy Spirit to come in and deal with you. So you keep your heart content. You keep your heart right before the Lord. And then watch how God can work in that situation. Because God doesn't work in a situation because somebody needs it. He works in a situation because somebody is being humble. He resists the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. If you need grace in your situation, put yourself on your face before the Lord. give him room to work.
That's right. That's right. And, one thing that this is very powerful too is that sometimes we think when we're talking about like going to somebody else and like venting or whatever, but like our children too, like we need to cover our spouses with our children. Mm-hmm. We need to make sure that we're not speaking, not like, spewing venom.
Don't go and try to get your kids on your side.
Right, because that's usually what it is. You're trying to build an alliance and get people on your side so that you can come against somebody.
Yeah.
Instead of partnering with them to
That's
help
fine
them
if you're coming
rise.
against the devil.
Right.
Don't come against people.
Never against people.
Right.
And so we as adults, as husbands and wives in our home, need to make sure that we are guarding our mouths to our children.
Yeah, amen.
And what we're speaking to or about our spouses in that place.
Amen.
That's
good.
powerful.
It's good wisdom. Mm-hmm. Amen. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Family by Design. I pray that you were blessed as you listen to the word of the Lord for your life today. I want to encourage you to go on and leave us a review and a 5-star rating. If this ministry is blessing you, go to our website at www.wartmen.org. There you can find more resources, and you can also consider partnering with this ministry. If you like what we're doing, we just pray that you would at least join us in prayer and consider supporting us financially as we take the gospel deep into the hearts of people. Gospel preached, hearts awakened, and nations reformed.